Welcome to IPA, an invaluable tool in the choral rehearsal. First, let's discuss why the International Phonetic Alphabet is important. IPA is to text what solfege is to sight singing, in my opinion. We teach sight reading to facilitate reading music and the assimilation of musical content more quickly. Singing the right vowel at the right time and for the correct duration is a challenge that every choral conductor faces. Conductors often repeat themselves again and again in an effort to homogenize vowel and consonant sounds. We teach IPA for rapid homogeneous understanding of a vowel or consonant. Just like sight reading exercises save time in rehearsal, in the long run, so does the teaching of IPA. When IPA is not being referenced, most often the answers for problematic vowels and even consonants are, again in my opinion, simply band-aid solutions because muscles within the vocal tract are not being reinforced correctly or consistently. Since we all speak differently and form vowels and consonants differently, IPA helps the unification process of these sounds. Bel canto singing addresses buccal, spatial, and tongue positioning for optimal sound quality. IPA is able to inform this technique, synthesizing this approach into a common understanding for each singer. A common approach for vowel and consonant synthesization is modeling. But even with a model, singers can misinterpret specific sound requests. Oftentimes when we're in rehearsal, we'll model a way that we want them to sing a specific phrase or one of the voice parts to sing it a certain way, and we'll make an attempt, and then they'll sing it back to us, and it seems like it's right to our ears, and then we hear a recording and we discover that it was way off, or they sing it back to us and we discover that there are major problems with their understanding of what our model was. But when it comes to text and consonant and vowel formation, when that model is reinforced by the use of IPA, our singers will be able to make vowel adjustments more quickly, allowing their muscles to develop so those physical constructs are automatically created upon the inhalation and at the onset of sound. So this is a chart that I like to show my students, showing the lip position. Notice at where the lips are, those different numbers. Those are just the different positions of where the lip will protrude depending on if it's an E. If it's an E, there's not a lot of protrusion in the natural construct of the lips. But when we go to number 8, oo, that is where the lips are protruded furthest. If the students know that lip formation is crucial to understanding the formation of a specific vowel, it'll be, I believe, in the long run, easier for them to make adjustments and even self-correct when we as the teacher help them identify that, oh, that vowel isn't quite there. And then notice also the tongue positions. One again, E is the highest and most forward point of the tongue. We look at number 5, the ah is the furthest back. So when the students understand this, it'll help them understand that the various shades of vowel color based off of tongue formation, lip formation, again helping them make speedy adjustments. It would be silly for me to influence you with my own bias about the International Phonetic Alphabet before showing you what some of the research says about this useful tool. So in 1936, Flower investigated the effectiveness of 2 methods of teaching French pronunciation to young students. Results showed that participants assigned to the phonetic method, or IPA symbols, conventional spellings of these symbols, as well as physiological production, so like the chart that we just saw, these students demonstrated a smaller number of pronunciation errors and a greater ability of comprehension than participants assigned to the imitation method, or as we commonly refer to it as, teaching by rote. In 1997, Japan investigated the effectiveness of 3 types of diction instruction for performances of liturgical Latin in selected choral pieces performed by 3 middle mixed choirs. So they used the phonetic instruction using IPA, phonetic instruction using the English Phonetic Alphabet, EPA, and then traditional rote instruction. Findings revealed significant difference among treatment groups in favor of the IPA experimental treatment for improving text reading accuracy and application of phonetic knowledge in phonetic translation of unstudied Latin texts. Participants also preferred phonetic instruction to traditional rote instruction. I find students of mine, when I've taught them using IPA, they feel empowered, like they know what's actually happened. Whereas if I'm teaching French or German, if I just tell them, well, say it like this, and they repeat it back, again, in my view, there is no way they're going to retain those specific sounds within their muscles. But if my instruction, my verbal instruction as I'm speaking the text, is reinforced by what's happening on the page because of the IPA that they have either written in their score or a transcription that I'll get to later that is provided for them, they're going to feel empowered just like they are when they're learning how to sight read and understand what in the world they do with the dotted quarter note. They're going to feel strengthened by that, and their music reading skills are going to increase. And IPA is a part of that. Which ages are capable of learning IPA? Elementary, middle, junior high, and high school students are just as capable as college students in their ability to understand IPA. If they can read and write, they can do IPA. As early as 1942, Peterson investigated the ability of preschool children to produce the sounds of IPA and studied the relationships of chronological age, intelligence, and sex to this ability. Results showed that even the youngest children, 31 to 36 months old, could produce the sounds of IPA vowels and diphthongs, because after all, they are looking at symbols and are just reproducing the symbols that they see. And we know children are able to do that with colors, with shapes, and of course with letters fairly early on. Previous empirical research has suggested that singers of all ages can efficiently acquire facility with IPA, and that learning the diction of a given language text through IPA may transfer to learning unfamiliar texts in that language. Of course, when I begin teaching IPA, I start with English. I start with their names, their first and last names as an assignment. Let's learn how to write your first and last name using IPA symbols. Once they see what those symbols are is using English, of course, the language that most of them are familiar with, then we can begin transferring those symbols into other languages, maybe Latin to start off with, and then we can get into the Romantic languages. It can also be included with the languages of East Asia, whether it be Mandarin, whether it be Filipino, whether it be Portuguese. The possibilities really are endless. If you're doing a piece in Church Slavonic and you want to include an IPA transcription, this is all possible. And then a little bit more about why IPA is so important. IPA and vocal technique. Richard Miller in The Structure of Singing was asked, "You keep plugging use of the International Phonetic Alphabet symbols for defining vowels in singing. What are its advantages? Doesn't familiarity with languages suffice? Won't such concentration on each individual sound inhibit expressive singing?" And this might be some questions that you have. And he responded, "Each vowel produces its own vocal tract shape. Much of voice training consists of ensuring linguistic articulation while maintaining the chiaroscuro tone, and this is attainable only when the shape of the vocal tract corresponds to the vowel being defined. International symbols assist in describing these sounds. No matter the language, clean vowel definition is the result of vocal tract shapes that correspond to what the larynx is saying. It is essential to be aware of the consistency of vowel formations from language to language. Most professional singers cannot fluently speak all of the languages encountered in the performance literature, yet they are expected to sing them accurately. He goes on and says, the IPA vowel system is a great asset in achieving phonetic exactitude. Learning how to use the International Phonetic Alphabet no more impedes artistry than does learning music symbols for pitch and rhythm. It is an efficient device for achieving subtleties from language to language and is of special value to the English language speaker who must be taught to avoid diphthongization and transition sounds. And of course, we know how often we battle constantly the changing of the tongue and lip position, even as students will want to change that vowel sound as they're maintaining an ah or an eh, and they'll bring that tongue up and they'll bring in that second vowel way too early. If we can isolate though the primary vowel sound and then reinforce that with an IPA symbol, it'll enhance the student's ability to do so. And then regarding consonants, when asked about the use of IPA symbols for consonants, Miller said, precise consonant symbols are equally necessary for achieving phonatory accuracy in the singing voice. How a singer handles voiced and unvoiced consonant phonemes helps determine the success of phrase direction and legato line. So if we look at the TH that we find, so it can either be voiced v or unvoiced th. But if a student only sees a TH, and typically they think of TH as producing the th sound, they're less likely to give it the beautiful voiced v, like if the word is that or this. They might gravitate towards this or that as they're singing because they're thinking about so many things that they might not be able to produce as beautiful a sound. And hopefully you can think of other examples where we see two particular consonants and one might make a voiced sound or an unvoiced sound, and we want our students to be aware of both. He continues, the consonant is as important as the vowel. In my teaching, I draw particular attention to the need for skillful handling in every musical phrase of anticipatory consonants, single consonants, double consonants, and the retention of their phonetic values. Relationships among properly articulated vowels and consonants are the substance of good vocalism. Diction is not something that is added on as an overlay to voice technique. It is one of its chief determinants. And if you're not familiar with IPA, here are some basic rules that you'd want to follow. And if you are familiar with IPA, please feel free to skip this next brief section. So here are some rules. IPA symbols are placed in brackets. Orthographic letters are the letters used in any given language. So if you're using a traditional EPA or English phonetic alphabet as symbols that you want your students to write down, those would be orthographic letters, and they would not necessarily be transferable to other languages, whereas IPA symbols are. An IPA symbol is typically referred to by its sound. So there you see the lowercase I, but we wouldn't refer to that as the lowercase I. We would call that the E vowel. And then the following symbol, the I vowel. And then the next one, the A vowel, and then the O, and then the K, and then the Sh. When we write a word into IPA, we are transcribing it. Silent letters are not transcribed into IPA, and that's a tricky thing. With IPA, we only want to isolate the actual sounds that we're making. Transcribe only what you hear. Double letters do not sound differently than single letters, with, of course, exceptions in Italian and German like bella and zon. We have those double consonants that we do want to include with a colon in between the two consonants. And then also, IPA symbols do not change regardless of orthographic capital letters. So capital letters do not determine an IPA symbol. We're just isolating the sounds. There are no apostrophes in IPA. And now here, this is where it gets to What are we going to do with this now? The practical and artistic application of using IPA in our rehearsals. IPA is not only valuable for text pronunciation, but serves as a vehicle for phrasal understanding and nuance. And this might be my favorite use of IPA. When singing in English, conductors might not prepare the text as carefully as they might another language. I believe it is just as crucial to prepare English text for English speakers, since many of us have different ways of pronouncing the same word, and most definitely when we sing. We must ask ourselves, is the way I am singing that word enhance the natural flow of the phrase, or does it impede its expressive potential? Oftentimes, our English pronunciation choices directly affect our phrasal delivery for good or ill, and I'm going to provide some examples in a little bit. So here are some suggestions. Speak through the text of each piece to determine the specific sounds of each word. If needed, create an IPA transcription of the text for yourself and possibly for the singers. If the text is in a different language, especially a tricky one, provide an IPA transcription for each singer and ask them to put the symbols into their own copy of music. This will save loads of rehearsal time and encourage an honest delivery of the text. So now, how do we apply that and put it into our score? Here is an example of a score that I've prepared for a concert that ACDA, a new women's choir that I've started, is going to be performing in the spring. Now, I've never sung in Swedish before. I've never conducted a piece that was in Swedish before, but I came across this Herren är min herde, and I have a member of the choir that knows Swedish and could coach me through it. Notice on the left side, I've written in the Swedish text of the entire piece. I don't repeat any of the text if it is repeated. I just do one line each time. And because this is not one of the common languages that we sing in, the coaching was crucial, listening to her speak, and she in turn talked to a friend of hers in Sweden that also spoke through the text so I could hear it. And then using those examples, we were able to create the IPA transcription to the best of our ability. If I needed little notes like this E is a little more open than other E's, then I would write that in more open. On this K consonant here, on ok, I had to make a notation that it's supposed to be soft. So these are simple things you can do, whether it be any language that you have your ensemble sing in. In my opinion, there is no way that the ensemble could sing this well without having the IPA and then written in the score. If I taught them the text by rote, it would be very difficult for them to understand the nuance of each of these sounds, assuming that most, if not all in the choir, have never sung in this language before. And many of our younger students, they've never sung in German or in French or Italian, and most of them even in Latin. And so to have symbols that represent certain sounds is hugely beneficial, and that these symbols can transfer over from one piece to another. Notice here on the right side, I've only written in the IPA one time. I don't repeat it if it appears in the score multiple times. And that text continues, so these two pages don't have the IPA transcribed. And then in here we have some new text, so I've included that here so the ensemble can easily see it. I've included it here as well. And then it just gives them a better chance. So as they're singing, as they're rehearsing, they can use these notations of mine as a reference. So I provide them the hard copies of the score. I give them a scanned copy of mine so they could see my markings, as well as the IPA so they can put that in their music as well. And this is the format that I follow throughout. The IPA is written in every section that there is new text, and that is how I'm able to teach with hopefully a high level of accuracy and integrity, a text that the ensemble is less familiar with. Here we have from the Broadway musical Little Women, the SSA arrangement of Astonishing. If you look at the top of the first page, the last measure, this is one way that I could do this that isn't informed by specific choices using IPA. Even now I feel its heat upon my skin. So if we emphasize the second syllable of even, now I feel its heat upon my skin, I believe the second syllable of even and the first syllable of upon, if we choose those two specific sounds, even and upon, we are incorrectly emphasizing parts of the word. But if I use an IPA symbol like the I on the second syllable of even and the schwa on the first syllable of upon, I'm not going to interrupt that phrase as much. Even now I feel its heat upon my skin. And then if we go on, a life of passion that pulls me from within. But if I speak it, a life of passion that pulls me from within, I am now emphasizing part of the word that isn't supposed to be emphasized. So if I include that schwa, and if also I'm able to include consonants in this that I especially want them to focus on, feel, heat, skin, passion. How often do we ask for a consonant to be pronounced a certain way, and it just doesn't happen? These symbols can reinforce it, so it can happen more frequently. And then as we go on to the bottom of the page, a life that I am aching to begin. But if I say a life that I'm aching to begin, B, and the E vowel is emphasized on begin versus the I vowel being mixed. A life that I am aching to begin. If I put a little of I in there, then I'm able to emphasize the second syllable, begin versus begin. And then we have the proper stress of the word using those symbols. So here is another example using the piece Object Lesson by Matthew Harris. This is the first movement, and it is in Spanish. And notice that on the first word, in, I don't want strictly an open and I don't strictly want an e. I want something in between, in. And my tongue position is what makes it possible. On the tongue position will be lower. On E, the tongue position will be higher. But if I can get it somewhere in between, in, then I'm getting closer to the actual sound of that word. En el árbol, árbol del día. And notice on the words del día that the D is underlined because we don't want to pronounce it del día, which is typically the case when English speakers are trying to speak or sing in Spanish, but we want the tongue to protrude slightly through the teeth, del día, and then it gives a less emphasized D sound and is accurate to the language. Notice also on the word árbol, there is a little line in front of the ah vowel. That's just helped to indicate the stress of that word, and that's very useful in a different language that our students might not be familiar with, is to show them where the stress of that word is using that apostrophe symbol. And then we go on, cuelgan. Notice how I have a k and a g, because it's not cuelgan with a strict g, and it's not cuelgan with a strict k. There's a mixture. Cuel. We go to pronounce the k, but then it comes out with a mixed g sound as well. Cuelgan frutos. Frutos de jade. Fuego y sangre en la noche. And those symbols will reinforce to the students how exactly they're supposed to pronounce this language. And here is an audio example of the text as you have the music in front of you, so you can hear how those IPA symbols were incorporated to the teaching of this text. Let's continue to talk about now how IPA informs the phrase. So here in the Lauritsen piece, Prayer, we notice we have some decisions to make, and again, just in English, we have some decisions to make. Keeper of the small gate, choreographer of entrances and exits, midnight whisper, traveling the wire. If I am not thoughtful with how I want the students, the singers, to pronounce these words, I could get something like this. Keeper of the small gate, choreographer of entrances and exits, midnight whisper, traveling the wire. And so now I get these moments where I'm now emphasizing words that aren't very important or syllables that are not supposed to be stressed because of the vowel choices, whether they're too open and my mouth is just flung this way. But if I am more thoughtful about the natural pronunciation of this, it will help the phrase flow more easily. Keeper of the small gate, choreographer of entrances and exits, midnight whisper, traveling the wire. And if I do it that way, then I can begin with the singers to construct a beautiful phrase that is not impeded by poor vowel and stress choices. So if we continue here, using the IPA symbols that I have written in, and they might be difficult for you to see, seducer, healer, deity or thief, versus seducer, healer, a lot of times, versus healer, versus actually pronouncing the second syllable the way it sounds when we speak it, and then deity instead of deity, deity or thief, deity or thief, because we're going to thief, deity or thief versus deity or thief. If we do that, we've interrupted the phrase. So we want to be very careful with the vowel choices that we make, even in English. and then going on, I will see you soon enough. So a mixture of the I and the E. If I say soon enough, then I'm emphasizing the first syllable, and the syllable that needs to be emphasized is the second syllable, enough. So if I incorporate 60% I and 40% E, then I'm going to get a sound that is more natural and accurate to the phrase shape as we lead the phrase to enough of enough. And then on the next line, in the shadow. Notice how I've drawn those little lines, if you can see them, for the word stress. In the shadow of the rainfall, in the brief violet darkening of sunset. If I don't do it that way, then I get this. In the shadow of the rainfall, in the brief violet darkening of sunset. And then now I am treating every 8th and 16th equally, and not every note or rhythm should be treated equally, and not every syllable should be treated equally. If we do it that way, it interrupts the beauty of the phrase, and we do want to avoid that. Now let's take a listen to this section that we've just analyzed. Now for some conclusions. Here are some quotes to strengthen our understanding of the benefits of IPA. From Karen Brunson, IPA symbols remind singers which way to shade a vowel, either for vocal reasons or language accuracy. And now from Joan Wall, foreign language diction texts used in music departments and universities use IPA as a common language to communicate pronunciation rules. IPA knowledge supports the singer who wishes to stay abreast of the latest vocal research and pedagogical ideas. By anchoring symbol and sound, IPA offers a positive influence on the development of the singing tone. Communication between teacher and student is enhanced, and IPA symbols are easy to learn. Yes, they are. And here are some IPA resources that you might consider adding to your library. The International Phonetic Alphabet for Singers, Diction for Singers, Translations and Annotations of Choral Repertoire Volume 2 German Text, which I have used many times when programming some of our standard German repertoire. Translations and Annotations of Choral Repertoire Volume 4 Hebrew Texts. And then that link there, whenever I'm creating my IPA transcriptions and I need a symbol that is difficult to find, how I'm going to get that symbol to copy and paste it into one of my transcriptions, I go to this site, which is just a page that has the IPA most of the IPA symbols on, and I just copy and paste that symbol and include it in my transcription. And then for those of you that are fortunate enough to have an IPA source paid transcriptions, most secondary schools won't have that, but universities will. But it's a most valuable source for art song repertoire as well as select choral repertoire. Here are some other resources that may be helpful to you. A handbook of diction for singers, a pronouncing dictionary of American English, and believe it or not, sometimes we might need that to really understand the pronunciation of a word. In a piece I recently conducted, the word was transitory, and a lot of times we would pronounce it transitory, so I looked up the word and discovered that the S in the middle of it is unvoiced versus voiced. And then these apps have been so beneficial for me over the years. You notice there's an IPA Latin, IPA German, IPA Italian, IPA French, Italian diction, French diction, German diction. The IPA Sing is an okay app, and then the Sketchbook is just if you ever wanted students to pull up that app on their phone or on an iPad, and then they could sketch in the symbols that you're wanting them to study if you didn't want them to do it on pieces of paper. These apps, while they don't produce a perfect IPA transcription, they are very accurate. I go through them after I've plugged in the text that I want to transcribe, and then I press the transcribe button. I will then go through and analyze how it has produced the IPA transcription, and then if I have any questions, I look it up. We have to make decisions about pronunciation. Not all pronunciation is going to be the same from one person to the next, so we have to make intelligent choices, and this helps expedite that process. And then any and every source that will help us engage the text more accurately and musically. And then here are some of the sources that I used in the presentation. Hopefully this has been beneficial for you in some way. IPA for me is a way that I can more closely and artistically approach text, not only for pronunciation, though that's important, but also for understanding the shape of a phrase by understanding the language. The Swedish piece that I've programmed for our spring concert, if I didn't carefully look at that text and understand how it was pronounced, I would not be able to understand what the composer intended by writing particular phrases the way she did. And so IPA will help us do that. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. I'm more than happy to go over these things with you if IPA is new to you, if it's intimidating, and help you begin to understand how you could go about learning IPA so you can introduce it to your ensembles, so it can be a great benefit for you and them as you explore the beautiful choral art. Thank you. The end.